friends, and welcome back to another video. So today I wanted to share some of my historical romance book recommendations. Now, these are great for people who are new to the genre, and even people who are veterans of the genre might appreciate some of these recommendations if you haven't read all the books yet. But these are some books that I absolutely love in this genre that I wanted to just share my love for, and hopefully you'll find some new books that you want to read. Alright, so the first recommendation that I have is A Matter of Class by Mary Balogh. This is a short novella, so it'll be a very quick read. Definitely something you can read in a couple of hours. One that you can read very quickly within one day. And I absolutely love this. This is probably my favorite Mary Balogh that I've read to this point. It is about this woman who is going to be cast out of her family soon because she has been ruined and she's deemed unmarriageable. And at the last moment, she is offered a reprieve from this complete disgrace. Basically, this wealthy neighbor is going to offer for her hand, and all her father has to do is swallow his pride and let her marry this wealthy man's son. And obviously, the family will be saved. She will get a lot of money to save her family, and her reputation will be saved as well because it's been in ruins. And so she's given an ultimatum that she will either marry this person named Reginald or she'll be outcasted from society. And meanwhile, Reginald is a very extravagant son of a wealthy man. He is always spending money left and right, and his father decides that he has to marry and settle down. So he finds this woman who is been disgraced, but she is the daughter of an earl, and he decides that his son is going to marry Annabelle. So the father is trying to push this relationship together, and he sees this as forcing his way into society, being recognized, because even though he is wealthy, he doesn't have status, and they will gain status from being associated with this earl's family. So I think it's really interesting. I know I didn't do a great job of summarizing what it's about, but it's a beautiful story, and you kind of see that it's not told completely in linear progression. So we'll get a chapter from the present perspective where it seems like this woman and this man are being forced to wed each other against their will, and you get to see this sort of play out in the present and in the past. So we start moving in the present forward in time, and then in the past we start when they're very young children, and we get jumps throughout the time periods of their interactions as kids. So that's really cute to see. I love that this story is not told in a completely linear fashion, that we do get those flashbacks. I just think that it adds so much depth to the relationship, and then we get to see how they have been, you know, kind of friends in childhood, and then the things that kind of break them apart later on. So we get a fuller picture of our two main characters. So even though it was a novella, you still feel like attached to these characters and to their story and want them to have a happily ever after, of course. So I highly recommend it. It is possibly my all-time favorite historical romance novella that I've read to this point. Definitely one that I absolutely recommend and think that you should read. It's such a quick read anyway that it will take you no time at all to get through. My next recommendation is for His Bride for the Taking by Tessa Dare. This is another historical romance novella, and honestly, I just recommend any Tessa Dare book to anyone who is new to the genre. It reads so much like contemporary romance that you can just fall into love with all of these characters. You fall into the books. It's so easy to read them. So she's definitely a great author for people who are new to the genre. I love all of her writing, and almost every book that I've read of hers has been one that I've absolutely loved. So I highly recommend Tessa Dare as an author, but I like His Bride for the Taking as a good way to try to sample her writing because it is a short little novella, and it is about this Lord Byrne who has never been one for following the rules. He has been very tempted to be with this woman, Mary, who he has been like pining after for a very long time, and he's worked very hard to resist temptation, but she's left at the altar by her groom. Ouch. And so he decides he's the only person that can save her from ruin. So Sebastian decides he's going to save the day, and he has been in love with her for over a decade, and it's about their story together. It's a beautiful short little novella that you can breeze through. Like I said with the last one, you can read this one also in a couple of hours, even less, and it's one that you will absolutely fall in love with. Don't expect anything too profound with this one. I will say I liked A Matter of Class better, but this is such a cute one if you're just looking for a quick lighthearted read. Definitely one that I recommend you pick up. On the topic of Tessa Dare, I also recommend The Duchess Deal. I think this is possibly one of the first historical romances that I ever read, and then I think this one is a really good one for people that are new to the genre. It's so easy to just fall into. I love the romance in this one, and this series is possibly Tessa Dare's most beloved series. We're still waiting on the newest book to come out, and it hasn't yet come out, but it is one that we will anxiously be awaiting for a long time, anyone that's a fan of hers. But hopefully she'll end up getting around to writing it, but I know that there's been just her being on hiatus and we don't really know what's going on with her, so hopefully she writes it. I just recommend this series so much. This is about this woman who, she is a seamstress, and she ends up making this wedding dress for this woman, but the bride ends up calling off the wedding with the groom, and so this woman who has spent so many hours working on this dress wants to get paid for it. So she goes to the groom and she's like, hey, I made this dress for your bride. I know you're not getting married anymore, but like I still need someone to pay for it because I spent a lot on the materials and so much labor that I need this paid for. And he's like, well, actually, why don't you marry me? And then the story goes from there. That's the general premise, and I just love it. It's kind of a Cinderella class difference story, and those have a special place in my heart. Definitely one that I absolutely love and recommend, and I think that you'll fall in love with it. It is a great one to get you into the historical romance genre if you've never read a historical romance before. My next recommendation is also another Tessa Dare book. I promise this is the last Tessa Dare on this list, and it is A Night to Surrender. This is the first book in the Spindle Cove series. So basically, Spindle Cove is this town where ladies go to kind of recover and to heal, especially those that have had like health issues, and a lot of spinsters also end up going there to kind of get away from society and to relax and refresh. And it is just the destination of choice for a lot of well-bred young ladies. And this story is about this Earl who feels like he doesn't belong there, but he has been asked to go there to set up a militia in this town that's full basically of just women mainly. And he thinks it's gonna be just a simple mission. He's like going to get these men in line very easily, but then he ends up meeting this woman named Susanna Finch, and she is the daughter of the man who founded this town, and they end up falling in love, and it's their story. She is very feisty, headstrong. She doesn't want anything to do with any stubborn or aggravating men, but it is this kind of like enemies to lovers kind of dynamic, and I love it. It is such an interesting story to read. I know this series isn't as beloved by Tessa Dare, but I think you should still give it a try. I love the townspeople and that kind of aspect of being a part of this larger community. I think that's something that isn't always present in historical romances, and I appreciated that all the characters were really impactful to the story in this, and it really sets you up for the series very well in this one, so definitely one I recommend. And if you get through this one, I also recommend Any Duchess Will Do by Tessa Dare. That one is possibly my favorite in the series and one that I absolutely love. It's about this barmaid Pauline who ends up being recruited by this duke to be his wife, but basically she has to take these Duchess lessons with his mother, and he's just trying to avoid getting married for some reasons that you'll discover in the book if you read it. And so he decides that he's gonna pay her money in order to kind of just be terrible at these lessons, and she agrees because she wants to get her sister away from their like abusive family situation. So it's a really beautiful story of that class difference. Again, I love a class difference in a historical romance, and you just fall in love with the characters. I love this world. I love Tessa Dare and her writing, and I can't say enough good things about it. My next recommendation is a trilogy by Sarah MacLean, and it is The Bareknuckle Bastards. I think this would be great for anyone who doesn't like super traditional historical romances. This trilogy kind of breaks with a lot of the conventions of the genre, which I think will appeal to anyone who likes something a little bit out of the ordinary. And it is about this woman who has been kind of ostracized from society a little bit. She had to fight to try to land a duke as a husband, but she ended up like losing that, and she's kind of been pushed aside, and now her family is facing some financial struggles as well, so there's that going on in it. And she ends up making a bargain with this person who calls himself Devil in the story, and he agrees that he's going to help her get this duke to marry her, and so that she can solve her family's problems and she can get back in with society. But in reality, he's just trying to exact his revenge on this duke because they have a lot of complicated history and past together. So I think that's a really cool premise, and he finds himself being irresistibly attracted to this plain little wallflower person, and it is kind of a trap for his enemy, but he ends up falling into it himself. So definitely one that I absolutely like. It's kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I think is beautiful. I haven't read too many Beauty and the Beast retellings, but I love how it plays out in this one. You really get a good setup for the characters, for the duke, for Devil, for his brother, and this first main love interest, and I think it's one that you will absolutely love. I really like this series because it thwarted all those conventions, and we see how these women who are like at the peak of society in some sense, they're really like at the forefront of society or want to be in society, kind of get pulled away from that, and then they realize that being in society and all that isn't worth it, and it's better to just just be on the sidelines and to live life as they want to be free. So you really see that in this book and the second book in particular. And I just love that they decide that they want to just live life to be content and happy in it and not do what society just dictates for them. I love this trilogy so much. I had a little bit of a hard time with the first book, but after seeing the whole picture come together, I was super impressed by Sarah MacLean's writing, and I definitely want to read more books by her. I recommend this trilogy, and honestly, just Sarah MacLean's writing in general, I think you would have a good time with any of her books. My next recommendation is a classic historical romance from the 90s, and it is The Secret by Julie Garwood. If you haven't read this one yet, I highly recommend it. It really gives you a taste of what the old school style of historical romance is like, and I love it so much. This is one of the books that really got me into this genre, so I highly recommend it. And it is about this English woman named Judith Hampton, who is very beautiful and a very loyal friend, and she actually ended up befriending this Scottish woman when she was a child because she lives near the border, I think. And so they decide that they're gonna be friends and they will always be at each other's side. And so this friend made her promise when they were children that she would always be with her when she ever had a child, because her mother died giving birth to her, so she wanted her friend there to support her, and she agrees, and she is going to make this journey from England to Scotland to be there for her friend who's giving birth. And also on this journey, she is going to meet her father, whom she has never known, and he is a laird in Scotland. But nothing has really prepared her for this life in Scotland, in the Highlands, in the medieval times. Like, she doesn't know anything about like Scottish culture or anything like that. She's always lived in England, and she ends up falling for this laird of a clan who is very compelling, and they have a clash of wills. They're both very strong-headed and willful people, and so they clash a lot, but they end up learning things from each other, and she learns to be a little bit more flexible, and he learns to kind of hear her wishes out and respect them. So they both compromise and they come together, and it's the story of their relationship as they grow to kind of love each other, and it's a beautiful historical romance. I highly recommend it. I know it's the first book in the Highlands Laird series, but I haven't read the second one yet, but it is such a classic Julie Garwood book that if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. This will get you into the historical romance genre, and I think it's one that you will absolutely love like I did. My next recommendation is a Lorraine Heath book, and it is The Earl Takes All, and this has got such an interesting and unique premise for historical romance. It is about this man who kind of has been disappeared, and he has left behind a very pregnant wife, and she ends up kind of seeing him again because he returns home, or does he? We don't know, but we think he has returned home, and she's like, he's different, and she's kind of left in the shadows about it because she doesn't know who this really is, but she thinks it is her husband who's returned home to her. And he also has a twin brother that she was previously attracted to, but she ended up marrying him because he was the Earl, and he had returned from a 2-month journey abroad. I think it was like in India, and she becomes very attached to him again in a way that she hadn't really felt for her husband in a long time, and we see that he is in love with her, but we end up finding out that he isn't actually her husband. He is the twin brother of the husband, and English law is going to prevent them from being together, so they kind of have to navigate that. This is such a messy book, but I loved it. It is a little bit out there, it is out of pocket for sure, but I love the story in this one. It is a mistaken identity story, which I actually quite like in the historical romance genre, and it's one that I really enjoyed. I fell in love with Lorraine Heath's writing in this book. It definitely made me want to pick up more books by her. I don't know how else to describe it except for it'll take you for a ride, and you won't even know how to feel throughout a lot of it. That's how I felt. There's so much confusion, there's so much angst going on, and then there is this person who's come back from the dead, supposedly, but we have to deal with all the consequences of that. So I highly recommend it. It's got a lot of plot going for it, which isn't always the case for historical romances, but I really resonated with the plot. It was out there enough that it kept me intrigued from page 1 to the end. My next recommendation is for When He Was Wicked by Julia Quinn. This is actually a book in the Bridgerton series, which is super popular on Netflix. I know that with Bridgerton coming to Netflix, it got a lot of hype and a lot of movement for the historical romance genre going a little bit, and I love this book in the Bridgerton series. I don't love all of them, but this is one of my favorites, and it is following the 6th child, so it is Francesca's story, and she has been widowed, so it is how she's kind of coming to terms with the loss of her husband, and so she's been widowed, and she had a great love, and it's about a second chance at love again. It is a second chance romance for this man who fell in love with her from the moment he met met her, but that was right before her wedding. And he's the cousin of her former husband. His name is Michael. And I just love their relationship and dynamics together. I love that she faces a lot of internal struggle about wanting to be with him, but feeling disloyal to her husband and thinking that they shouldn't be together because it would be just not right to the memory of her husband. And I love that they both struggle with that. And he really shows her that she is worth being loved again, that she definitely should be with him. And I love it. There is a lot of discussion also in here about her fertility issues and all of that. So just know that before going in. And I think this is quite possibly my favorite in the Bridgerton series. If you're gonna read one, you should definitely read this one. And I would say a lot of the books kind of make more sense to read together, but this one is a little more isolated from the other books in the series. So you can definitely read this as a standalone, and I highly recommend it. You will fall in love with their relationship and you will really understand why they go back and forth and struggle in this one. I just love the story and I love the romance, the slow burn of it, and just the fact that she wants to be with him, but there's a part of her that feels disloyal. You really feel for her, and there's a lot of empathy that I had for Francesca in this story. I love Francesca as a protagonist. I really like Michael and how he was as a hero, and I highly recommend it. All right, so we're nearing the end of the list, but I have a few more recommendations, and my last recommendations are all Lisa Kleypas books. I just recommend her as an author as a whole. I think that you would absolutely fall in love with her writing. She's a great gateway author into the historical romance genre, and she is a well-beloved author in the genre. So if you haven't read her books, I highly recommend that you do. But the first series that I have to talk about is the Hathaways series. Now, I don't have all of the books, but I have the first book, the third book, and the fourth book, I think, in the series. I just have random ones because I'm slowly collecting them over time. I love this series so much. I'm particularly fond of Mine Till Midnight, which is the first book in the series, but you kind of follow these siblings who have been growing up middle class in the 1800s in England. They're not in the aristocracy or anything like that, when all of a sudden the brother in the family ends up inheriting an earldom, I think it is. He ends up inheriting some sort of title, and so that's kind of where we pick up, and they're moving to this estate at the beginning of the first book, and that's where the series takes off. And the first one follows the romance of the eldest sister with a man who has a lot of money, but he's not titled or anything like that, and it follows their story together. I love it. I love that we get Cam introduced in the Wallflowers series, which I will mention in just a second. So there is some context for him, and I just love this series as a whole. There's some books that were really a hit for me and some that weren't as much, but these three I absolutely loved, especially Mine Till Midnight and Married by Morning. These are two of my favorites. Married by Morning is following Kat and the brother in the family and their relationship, and it's definitely an enemies to lovers one, so if you like that trope, you probably will like this book as well. But I love their family relationships even more than the family relationships in the Bridgerton series, which is saying a lot. So if you're looking for a series similar to Bridgerton to dive into, I recommend this series so much. I like these books even better than the Bridgertons, and I think that you will love them too. I just love all their dynamics, and they have such big personalities that it's really fun to read about. And these books just have so much hijinks going on in them that I think that you will fall in love with it. I fell in love with Lisa Kleypas' writing, and I love this series, so I highly recommend them. And then my last recommendations, but most certainly not my least, is the Wallflower series by Lisa Kleypas, which I briefly mentioned before. This series is following four friends who are wallflowers who are at the fringes of society, and they're trying to find husbands. So they become friends at the beginning of the first book, which I don't have here. I have the other three, but they become friends and they decide that they're going to work together to try to get each other husbands. And they decided that they're going to do an age order from oldest to youngest. So that's what this series is focused on. It's about them trying to win husbands in this marriage market. It's very traditional Regency romance, but in the best way. And I just love the friendship between the four main characters. There are other historical romances that try to have that friendship bond that just don't work for me as well as this series does. And this was my first Lisa Kleypas series, so it'll definitely hold a special place in my heart. Secrets of a Summer Night was my first Lisa Kleypas book that I ever read, so I highly recommend this series to you, especially Devil in Winter. Just the villain arc of St. Vincent and how he ends up being redeemed in this book is incredible. I love that he is an anti-hero in the series, and I just love that we have a mix of a couple of English young women and two American heiresses, so that adds to the fun and the hijinks in this. The Americans bring so much life into the series and they add a breath of fresh air, and I just love it so much. I've reread It Happens One Autumn and Devil in Winter countless times, and I'm definitely due for a reread for Scandal in Spring and Secrets of a Summer Night, but I love this quartet so much. I have yet to get Secrets of a Summer Night, but I will be looking to acquire that one soon. Alright, so those are all of my historical romance recommendations. I know that if you are a veteran of historical romance, you probably read a lot of these, but hopefully you got one or two new new recommendations from the video. And if you're new to the genre, these are great books to start with. Most of these are just great to just dive into. And I especially recommend Tessa Dare and Lisa Kleypas for people who are new to the genre. But I hope you like these recommendations. So if you like this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate the support so much. And I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that watches all of my videos. If you made it to this point in the video, leave me a quill emoji in the comments down below. And if you have read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Just make sure to leave a little spoiler mark if you're going to say anything that would spoil anything for anyone else viewing. And I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching. And wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you are doing well. And hopefully I will see you for the next video. Bye!